In a quaint village, a raw scream shatters the night, marking the beginning of a tragic tale filled with betrayal, jealousy, and an unyielding quest for vengeance. When Karim, a beloved husband and father, falls mysteriously ill, his wife Merinda becomes the target of cruel accusations from her own family, led by Karim's envious brother Babayaro. As the storm of misunderstandings and falsehoods intensifies, viewers will witness the heartbreaking fallout of a brother's greed and the extraordinary resilience of a mother fighting for her children. This powerful narrative unravels the devastating impact of envy while revealing the profound strength found in forgiveness. Join us as we explore the depths of love, the heights of betrayal, and the quest for redemption in a story that will tug at your heartstrings. I saw the dark look in his eyes, a look that promised trouble. One gloomy afternoon, Babayaro left home with a heavy heart and a cruel plan. He went deep into the forest to meet a native doctor. He was a strange man whose words made even the wind whisper fear. Babayaro pleaded with him, saying he wanted to change his fate. The native doctor, with a piercing gaze, told Babayaro a terrible task: use a knife on a mirror to strike Karim's calm face. I later learned that Babayaro returned with a knife, trembling in his hand. Under a dim sky, he found an old mirror in a hidden shrine. For a long moment, he hesitated, his mind filled with memories of their childhood. But then, driven by envy and dark desire, he plunged the bloody knife into the mirror. The eerie reflection of Karim's kind face seemed to curse that very night. While this wicked act took place far away, at home the scene was different. Karim sat down to a warm meal with Merinda and their 3 joyful children. Laughter filled the small dining room, and hope danced in their eyes. But suddenly, Karim clutched his chest and cried out in pain. He whispered, "Something is wrong, I feel a blade inside my heart." The joy in the house turned to panic as Karim grew weak before everyone's eyes. They rushed him to the hospital, where the doctors could find no reason for his pain. Despite tests and checkups, they said he was healthy on the outside. Yet day by day, his strength faded as if an unseen force was stealing his life. Every moment was filled with confusion and dread for his family. One fateful morning, as the family gathered with worried faces, Babayaro arrived. He came with some village elders whose faces were grim and serious. Babayaro declared that Karim's sickness was no normal illness, it was a punishment from the gods. He said that Merinda, his gentle wife, had done something wrong. I could not believe my ears as I heard them blame the woman who loved Karim dearly. Soon, dark whispers spread among the family and neighbors. They said Merinda had bewitched Karim and stolen his life away. Even though Merinda tried to explain that she only cared for him, no one listened. They called her a witch and a curse, and the joyful home turned cold and silent. I felt a deep sadness watching how quickly love was replaced by harsh judgment. In his final hours, a weak Karim tried to tell his truth. He murmured, "Merinda loves me, she is my heart," but his words were lost in the storm of anger. That very morning, Karim drew his last breath in silence. The house, once full of life, was now heavy with grief. I sat in quiet despair, unable to change the tragic turn of events. After Karim's death, Babayaro put on a mask of sorrow, though his heart rejoiced in secret. He believed that by removing Karim, he had finally won his rightful share. But I saw the pain in Merinda's eyes as she cradled her children. She cried out for justice even as the family turned against her. Deep inside, I wondered how a man could be so cruel to his own kin. The village elders decided that the gods had spoken. They believed Merinda was guilty. They declared that her silence was proof she had cursed Karim in the spirit world. In a cold meeting, they pronounced that Merinda must confess her sins. No one even questioned the strange ideas that had taken hold. I felt helpless as the scales of justice tipped in favor of false blame. That night, a terrible punishment was set in motion. Merinda was forced to stay in a small, dark room with Karim's dead body. They said that if she did not confess, his ghost would torment her forever. The room was cold, the only sound was the soft weeping of a broken woman. I watched from afar, heart aching for the pain she had to endure. When morning came, the door of the punishment room was unlocked. The foul smell of loss and despair rushed out into the light. Merinda, once so full of gentle warmth, now looked like a shadow of herself. Her eyes were empty, and every movement spoke of deep sorrow. I knew at that moment that an innocent soul was being crushed by cruelty. In the days that followed, the elders gathered and declared their verdict. They accused Merinda of killing Karim by stealing his spirit. The community, full of harsh words and anger, turned away from her. Her children were shunned too, seen as a curse on their own family. I wept quietly, for I knew deep down that no one could be that cruel. Babayaro wasted no time. He took over all of Karim's hard-earned wealth. He claimed the house, the small cars, and even the business they had built. He moved with his family to the busy city of City, where he flaunted his riches. Meanwhile, Merinda and her children were forced to leave the only home they had ever known. Their world crumbled, and the laughter that once filled their home was gone. Back in the small village of the village, life became a daily struggle. Merinda did all she could to care for her little ones, but poverty was a harsh master. One by one, the children had to drop out of school to help with chores. Their bright eyes dimmed under the heavy weight of hunger and loss. I often wondered how such innocence could be marred by cruel fate. In her heart, Merinda kept a spark of hope even in the bleakest times. She decided that her children must have a chance to learn and grow. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, she gathered them for a long journey. They left the only home they had known, seeking help in the city. I walked with them part of the way, sharing their silent tears along the dusty road. At the towering gates of City, Merinda and her children pleaded for help. They approached Babayaro's mansion with timid hope in their eyes. Their voices were soft but carried the weight of a desperate plea. "Please, sir, our children need to go back to school," Merinda said gently. But Babayaro only sneered and told them to leave without a second thought. Babayaro's laughter rang coldly as he dismissed their plea. He mocked their poverty and reminded them that they had no claim to his wealth. The children, with tears streaming down their faces, knelt on the dusty road. Their small voices cried out, "Uncle, please help us, just a little." I felt my heart break for them as they were turned away in humiliation. Forced to return to the village, Merinda and her children trudged back home in despair. Their journey was long, and every step echoed the loss of what they once had. Even the kind old souls along the road whispered words of pity and sorrow. The weight of their rejection in the city pressed down on them like a curse. I kept a silent vigil, wishing I could mend the broken pieces of their lives. Life in the city for Babayaro seemed to flourish as he grew richer day by day. But fate, as I would soon learn, has a way of balancing wrongs with heavy price. Not long after his triumph, his eldest son collapsed suddenly at school. The joyful boy, so full of promise, fell into a deep, unexplained sleep. The school became a place of terror as whispers of a mysterious illness spread. Rushed to the hospital in City, the boy's life flickered away too soon. Doctors tried everything they could, but the illness was beyond their care. Babayaro's eyes filled with grief as he stared at the empty chair where his son once sat. That day, even his vast riches could not comfort the deep void of loss. I could see that the seeds of envy and cruelty had started to bring a bitter harvest. As days passed, another terrible fate befell Babayaro. A sharp pain began in his leg, which soon swelled and turned a sickly color. Doctors warned him that the infection was dangerous and that his leg might have to be amputated. But Babayaro, stubborn in his pride, refused to accept the treatment. I watched in sorrow as his condition worsened and his once strong body began to fail. Late one night, I heard a strange sound from within the grand mansion. Babayaro had fallen into a deep, troubled sleep, and in his dreams, he saw Karim. In the dream, Karim's kind face was twisted with sadness and betrayal. "Why did you do this, my brother?" Karim's voice echoed in the darkness. Babayaro awoke in terror, drenched in sweat and haunted by guilt he could not escape. The next morning, Babayaro could not hide his despair. He spoke quietly to his wife, confessing the burden of his regret. His words were heavy and filled with remorse as he recounted his evil deeds. He said, "I was jealous of Karim's life. I wished for his power and his love. I listened from a distance, my heart aching for a man lost in his own misery. Days turned into weeks, and Babayaro's health kept declining. Every day, his body grew weaker and the infection spread deeper into his flesh. The grand halls of his mansion began to smell of decay and sorrow. Even his closest servants stayed away, fearful of the cursed man he had become. I felt that his own envy had become a poison that no wealth could ever cure. In his lonely mansion, Babayaro was haunted by his choices. Every step he took was filled with pain as the infection consumed his body. His skin began to peel away, and the once proud man now looked like a withered shadow. I could almost hear his inner cries of regret with every shuddering breath. It was as if the darkness he had invited into his heart was now destroying him from within. I often sat by the old well near his mansion, pondering the heavy lesson of it all. Envy and greed had twisted Babayaro's life and led him down a path of ruin. Every day, the townsfolk whispered that no one escapes the price of evil. Even in his pain, Babayaro was a living reminder of that harsh truth. I wished that someone would learn from his suffering before it was too late. Then, one quiet afternoon, something unexpected happened. Babayaro called for a meeting and asked that Merinda come before him one last time. He said, "Before I leave this world, I must speak my truth." The words hung in the heavy air as the family gathered in a dim room. I could see the trembling in Babayaro's hands and the sorrow in Merinda's eyes. In that small, somber room, Babayaro began to confess his darkest secrets. With tears streaming down his face, he admitted, "I was jealous of Karim. I asked the native doctor for help to take his life in a way that would make me rich and powerful." He revealed how he had stabbed a mirror to set in motion this terrible fate. Every word was a heavy confession that filled the room with regret. Babayaro's voice trembled as he continued, "I blamed you, Merinda, for what happened. I forced the elders to say you were a witch, and I drove you and the children away." I listened in horror as he recounted every lie he had told. At that moment, the air was thick with guilt and sorrow. The truth spilled out like bitter medicine, and I wished I could undo the past. With a heavy heart, Babayaro looked directly at Merinda and whispered, "Please, forgive me." His voice cracked as he said, "I never meant for things to end this way." Even though I knew no forgiveness could mend such deep wounds. Merinda's eyes, though full of pain, shone with a quiet strength. She replied simply, "I forgive you, not for you, but so I may find peace." At that moment, a small spark of justice was lit in the room. Babayaro, in his trembling despair, agreed to return everything he had taken. He signed the papers that gave back Karim's house, the business, and the lands to you, Merinda, and your children. It was a humble act, yet it was a long-awaited step toward righting his wrongs. I felt that this act of giving back was the only light in the long, dark tunnel of that tragedy. Not long after that confession, Babayaro's body could no longer fight. His pain grew unbearable, and he passed away quietly, leaving behind a legacy of regret. The grand mansion that once echoed with his pride now stood silent and decaying. I wept for the lost soul who had let envy steal not only his life but the happiness of those around him. Even in death, his dark choices served as a lesson to all who heard his story. In the days that followed, life slowly began to change. The community saw that the wealth and property that had been taken by Babayaro belonged rightfully to Merinda and her children. They returned to the old house, now filled with memories both bitter and sweet. And they set about mending the wounds of the past with hard work and gentle care. I watched as hope began to grow once again from the ashes of despair. Over time, the dark shadow that had covered our town began to lift. Merinda worked day and night to restore what had been taken from her. And her children, though scarred by hardship, learned to smile again. I marveled at their strength and the quiet power of forgiveness that shone through their eyes. Their perseverance was proof that even the deepest pain could lead to new beginnings. Years passed, and I often recalled those terrible days with a heavy heart. I saw how the events, as painful as they were, taught us a lesson about the cost of envy. Merinda's steady love for her children and her gentle forgiveness became a beacon for our community. I learned that no matter how deep a wound might be, time and truth can help it heal. In every tear shed, there was a promise that kindness would one day triumph over hatred. I still remember one cold night when Babayaro's ghost of regret seemed to whisper in the wind. In his dreams, he saw Karim's kind face asking, "Why did you do this?" That haunting question echoed in every dark corner of his mansion. Even though Babayaro could not escape his guilt, his confession helped set some things right. It was a bitter end for a man consumed by jealousy, leaving us all with a solemn reminder. The day finally came when Merinda and her children returned to what was once their home. They walked slowly through the gates of the old house, each step heavy with memories. Inside, every room told the story of a lost past and the promise of a better future. The business was restarted, and the lands began to yield fruit once more. I felt that, in reclaiming what was theirs, they had also reclaimed their dignity. In time, the story of love, betrayal, and forgiveness spread far and wide. People began to understand that envy can only bring ruin, while truth and love rebuild lives. I often spoke to the children, reminding them that kindness must always win. No matter how much wealth or power one holds, without love, all is empty. That simple truth resonated in our hearts and taught us to choose goodness every day. As I bring this story to a close, I want you to remember the pain that envy can cause. Babayaro's actions led to a chain of events that hurt everyone involved. But even in the darkest hour, Merinda's gentle spirit shone through, lighting a path to healing. Her quiet strength showed us that forgiveness is a powerful tool against cruelty. I hope that in sharing this tale, you too will learn that love and honesty must always guide our lives. Today, I stand as a witness to a time when our town was torn apart by bitter greed. I have seen hearts break and lives change forever because of one man's jealous desire. Yet I also saw a family rise from the ashes and rebuild what was lost with hope. Merinda's courage remains a lesson for all of us, urging us to choose compassion over anger. In my heart, I know that even the deepest wounds can mend when we open ourselves to forgiveness. Looking back, I see that every act of betrayal and every harsh word came with a cost. Babayaro's downfall was not just physical, it was a slow decay of his spirit, too. I learned that when we hurt our own family, we hurt the very core of our community. No wealth, no matter how great, can fill the emptiness left by broken trust. May our hearts always choose the light of truth, even when darkness seems to prevail. In the end, my dear listeners, remember that every choice we make matters deeply. Babayaro's envy cost him his life and left scars on many innocent souls. Yet through his confession and the return of what was stolen, some justice was done. Merinda's quiet forgiveness and steadfast care for her children taught us that hope can grow again. Now, as I finish this story, my heart is both heavy and hopeful. Heavy for the losses we suffered and hopeful because the truth came to light at last. I share this memory so that you may understand the real price of envy and deceit. Let the story of Karim, Merinda, and Babayaro remind you that even when the world seems unfair, it is love and forgiveness that can bring us back from the edge of despair. The end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments about what you learned from it. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more fantastic stories just like this one. Thank you for being a part of this journey.